There's a quiet moment that catches a lot of men off guard. Not when he first notices her, not when she smiles. It happens later, when he realizes she's much younger than him, and suddenly every thought that felt natural a few seconds ago begins arguing with itself. Would she even take me seriously? Am I reading this wrong? If I talk to her, will people think I'm trying too hard? Most men never admit those thoughts out loud. They smile, they joke, they pretend they're confident. But inside, they're already rejecting themselves before she ever has the chance. If you've ever been there, I want you to know something. That inner conversation isn't really about her. It's about what seeing her brings up inside you. And before we go any further, if these conversations help you understand yourself a little better, consider subscribing. It helps this channel reach more men who quietly carry questions they never ask anyone. Now, something interesting happens when a man meets a younger woman. Many people assume the biggest challenge is the age difference. Often it isn't. The real challenge is what the age difference does to his behavior. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. A man who is relaxed around women his own age suddenly becomes careful. Every word gets checked before he says it. He laughs a little too quickly. He explains things nobody asked him to explain. Or he goes to the opposite extreme, trying to prove he's still exciting, still young, still interesting. It's subtle. Sometimes he doesn't even notice he's doing it, but she often feels it long before she understands why. Not because younger women have some magical ability to read minds, because people, in general, notice emotional tension. Imagine this. You're talking over coffee. She's telling you about a trip she wants to take. Half of your attention is on her story. The other half is wondering whether mentioning your age will change everything. You stop listening. You start performing. And conversations almost always change the moment performance replaces curiosity. That's something many men misunderstand. Attraction doesn't usually disappear because someone is older. Sometimes it fades because the older person starts acting like they're standing in front of a judge instead of another human being. There's a difference, a very big one. You can almost hear it. One man asks questions because he's genuinely interested. Another asks questions because he's hoping every answer earns him another minute of approval. The words may sound similar, the feeling doesn't. People respond to feelings long before they analyze sentences. Now, does that mean age never matters? Of course not. Life experience can shape expectations. Different stages of life can create practical challenges. Sometimes those differences become too large. Sometimes they don't. Human relationships are rarely that simple. But there's something almost nobody talks about. Some younger women are drawn toward emotional steadiness more than excitement. Not because they want someone perfect, not because they're looking for someone to solve their life. Sometimes they're simply exhausted by unpredictability. Think about that for a second. When everyone around you is trying to impress, the calm person stands out. Not because he's louder, because he's quieter, because he doesn't seem desperate to convince anyone of anything. Ironically, the men most worried about the age gap often stop showing the exact quality that could make the age gap feel smaller. Presence. Real presence. Not trying to sound wise, not trying to sound young, just being there, listening, laughing naturally, disagreeing respectfully, allowing silence without rushing to fill it. That kind of confidence feels surprisingly rare, and it creates a question inside her mind that she may never say aloud. Why does he seem so comfortable when everyone else is trying so hard? But comfort alone isn't enough. Because there's another mistake older men make, one that usually begins with good intentions and quietly pushes younger women away before either of them realizes what's happening. It's strange how often good intentions create the wrong impression. A man meets a younger woman. He genuinely wants to make her feel comfortable. He doesn't want to come across as controlling or arrogant, so he starts making himself smaller. He apologizes for things that don't need an apology. I know I'm probably too old for you. I guess this is a little weird. You probably have guys your own age chasing you. He says it with a smile, hoping she'll reassure him. Sometimes she does. But something has already shifted. Without realizing it, he has handed her the job of calming his insecurity. And that's a heavy thing to place into the hands of someone you've just met. People are often attracted to honesty. They're not usually attracted to emotional responsibility they never agreed to carry. There's a difference. A quiet one, but an important one. Imagine the two of you walking through a bookstore. She picks up a novel she loved in college. You haven't read it. Instead of pretending you have, you simply ask, "What's so special about that one?" Her face changes. She lights up. Not because you knew the answer, because you were curious without feeling threatened by what you didn't know. That matters more than many men realize. Curiosity has a way of making another person feel seen. Insecurity often makes them feel evaluated. And younger women, like anyone else, can usually sense the difference. Now, some men hear advice like this and swing too far in the opposite direction. They decide they need to become the wise older man, the teacher, the guide, the one with all the answers. Every conversation turns into a lesson. She mentions work. He explains careers. She mentions music. He explains how music used to be. She talks about a dream. He tells her how life really works. It doesn't happen all at once. It slips in quietly, almost kindly. But over time, something disappears. Playfulness. The conversation stops feeling like two people discovering each other. It starts feeling like one person giving a lecture. Experience is valuable, really valuable, but only when it's invited. Wisdom has a funny quality. It doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up naturally. Sometimes in patience, sometimes in restraint, sometimes in knowing when to leave a little silence instead of filling every empty space with advice. I've noticed that many emotionally mature women, young or old, aren't searching for someone who always knows more. They're looking for someone who makes them feel safe enough to think out loud. That's different. Very different. There's another moment that often reveals more than words ever could. You're sitting together after dinner. The conversation slows. Neither of you reaches for your phone. Nobody rushes to entertain the other. For a few seconds, nothing happens. Some men panic during moments like these. They start talking simply because silence feels dangerous. Others stay present. They smile, look around, take a sip of coffee. Let the moment exist. Comfort with silence sends a quiet message. I'm not afraid of this moment. And confidence is often less about saying impressive things than about not needing to. But there's something even more interesting beneath all of this. It has nothing to do with age, nothing to do with appearance, nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with emotional direction. Many younger women aren't asking themselves, is he older? At least not for very long. The deeper question, whether they consciously notice it or not, is often, how do I feel about myself when I'm with him? Do I feel judged? Do I feel rushed? Do I feel managed? Or do I feel relaxed enough to be myself? That question quietly shapes more relationships than people realize, because emotions become memories, and memories become decisions. But there's one habit that quietly destroys that feeling. A habit so common that countless men mistake it for showing interest, when, in reality, it slowly begins to erase the mystery that attraction quietly depends on. There comes a moment when interest quietly turns into chasing. Most men don't notice the exact second it happens. It doesn't begin with 100 messages. It begins with one small decision. You send a text. She doesn't reply for a few hours. Nothing unusual. People have work, friends, family, life. But your mind doesn't stay there. It starts writing stories. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe she's losing interest. Maybe I should send something funny. Then another message, just to keep the conversation alive. At least, that's what you tell yourself. I've seen this happen to men who are confident in every other part of their lives. They can lead meetings, handle pressure, solve difficult problems. But one delayed text from someone they genuinely like, and suddenly they're negotiating with their own imagination. It's a very human thing. When we care, uncertainty gets louder. Not because we're weak, because uncertainty has a way of filling empty spaces with fear. Now imagine something different. She finally replies. Not with a long explanation, just, sorry, Busy day. That's it. A few words. Two men can receive that exact same message and experience two completely different realities. One immediately wonders what he needs to do to keep her attention. The other simply smiles, answers when he has time, and continues living his day. Neither man knows what she's thinking. The difference isn't information, it's emotional balance. And emotional balance has a quiet kind of attractiveness. Not because it plays games, because it creates room for another person to move toward you instead of feeling like they constantly have to reassure you. There's something else I've noticed. Many older men believe they need to impress younger women with everything they've achieved. The career, the house, the travel, the stories. Those things can be interesting. Of course they can. Life experience gives you stories that younger people simply haven't had time to collect. But stories are most powerful when they appear naturally, not when they're arranged like trophies on a shelf. Think about the people you've enjoyed talking to the most. Were they constantly trying to prove themselves? Probably not. They made you feel like the conversation belonged to both of you. They asked questions they actually wanted answers to. They laughed at themselves. They admitted when they didn't know something. That kind of confidence is surprisingly disarming, because it isn't built on perfection, it's built on comfort. And comfort is contagious. There's another quiet mistake that happens when a man believes the age gap gives him an advantage. He assumes she's less experienced emotionally. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it isn't. Age and emotional maturity don't always grow at the same speed. You've probably met people in their 20s who handled conflict with remarkable patience. And you've probably met people twice their age who still avoided every uncomfortable conversation. Life has a way of humbling our assumptions. That's why approaching someone with respect matters so much. Not because it's polite, because respect allows you to discover who she actually is, instead of who you imagined she'd be. Some younger women have extraordinary emotional insight. Others are still figuring themselves out. The same is true of older adults. Every person arrives carrying different experiences, different fears, different dreams. When you stop assuming, you start seeing. And people often feel that. Not in your words, in the way you look at them, the way you listen, the way you leave space before responding instead of rushing to fill every silence. Now, there is one conversation that almost every age gap relationship eventually reaches. It's the conversation many men secretly hope never comes. Friends, family, other people's opinions. That moment has ended relationships that otherwise could have been healthy. Not because the couple lacked feelings, but because they weren't prepared for the quiet pressure that comes from outside the relationship. And what happens next often reveals whether the connection was built on attraction alone or something much stronger. Most people imagine that relationships are tested by the big moments. A dramatic argument, a painful betrayal, a life-changing decision. Sometimes they are. But more often, they're tested by smaller moments that don't seem important at first. You're walking together through a restaurant. A waiter mistakes you for her father. Nobody meant any harm. It lasts maybe 3 seconds. You both laugh politely. The conversation continues. But inside, one of you is wondering, did that bother her? The other is wondering, did that bother him? Neither of you says anything, and silence begins writing a story. Not because of what happened, but because of what wasn't said. This is where many relationships quietly lose their footing. Not from judgment, from guessing. Guessing what the other person feels, guessing what they need, guessing what they're afraid to admit. And guesses have a strange habit of becoming beliefs. I've sat with people who carried those silent beliefs for months. He assumed she was embarrassed by the age gap. She assumed he regretted pursuing someone younger. Neither assumption was true, but both were powerful enough to change how they acted. That's how distance begins. Not with a door slamming, with tiny misunderstandings that never get daylight. There's something deeply attractive about a man who can ask a difficult question without making it feel like an interrogation. I've been wondering something. Then, a pause. How has the age difference felt for you? No accusation, no fishing for reassurance, just curiosity. That kind of conversation creates safety, because you're inviting honesty instead of demanding comfort. She may tell you it hasn't crossed her mind much, She may admit that sometimes she worries about what other people think. She may surprise you completely. The important part isn't getting the perfect answer. It's creating a relationship where the truth has somewhere to go. Now, let's talk about confidence for a moment. Real confidence often looks quieter than people expect. It doesn't insist on being right. It doesn't panic when someone disagrees. It doesn't crumble because another person has concerns. Imagine she tells you, "My friends asked me why I'm dating someone older." You could become defensive. You could spend 20 minutes explaining why they're wrong. Or you could smile gently and ask, "What did you tell them?" Notice the difference. One response fights invisible enemies. The other stays connected to the person standing in front of you. That doesn't mean ignoring real challenges. Age gap relationships can face practical questions, different life goals, different routines, different responsibilities. Sometimes those differences matter a great deal. Sometimes they don't. Healthy couples don't pretend those conversations aren't necessary. They simply don't let fear make every decision for them. There's another detail that's easy to miss. Many men become so focused on proving the relationship can work that they stop enjoying the relationship itself. Every date becomes a test. Every disagreement becomes evidence. Every quiet day becomes something to analyze. That sounds exhausting, because it is. A relationship isn't a courtroom. You don't have to win a case every morning before breakfast. Sometimes love grows in the ordinary, making dinner together, laughing because neither of you can remember where you parked, watching a movie neither of you really likes, but staying because the conversation afterward is better than the film. Those moments don't look impressive from the outside, yet they're often where emotional trust quietly takes root. And trust changes something important. It slowly replaces the need to constantly ask, "Does she really choose me?" with a calmer question, "How can we keep choosing each other?" That shift is subtle, almost invisible, but it changes the entire direction of a relationship, because eventually, every couple reaches a point where attraction alone isn't enough. Something deeper has to carry them, and strangely enough, it usually begins with one quality that almost nobody talks about anymore. That quality is consistency. Not excitement, not charm, not saying exactly the right thing, just consistency. It sounds almost too ordinary to matter until you realize how rare it has become. A lot of people can create chemistry for an evening. They can be witty over dinner, confident on a first date, magnetic for a weekend. But what happens after that? When life becomes less cinematic, when someone has a difficult week, when plans change, when stress replaces excitement. That's where consistency quietly steps into the room. And it doesn't make a dramatic entrance, it simply keeps showing up. I've often noticed that when a younger woman feels secure with an older man, it usually isn't because he has all the answers, it's because his behavior doesn't keep changing. He isn't warm one day and emotionally unavailable the next. He doesn't disappear just to create mystery. He doesn't become a different person depending on who's watching. She learns something simple. "I know who I'm meeting today." That kind of emotional steadiness has a calming effect. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, because predictability creates space for trust. And trust allows attraction to breathe instead of constantly fighting uncertainty. Think back to the beginning of this conversation. Remember that man who questioned himself before he'd even spoken to her? Who worried that the number of birthdays he'd had somehow decided the outcome before the first conversation even began? He wasn't really afraid of the age gap. Not completely. He was afraid that it defined him. There's an important difference. Your age tells part of your story. It doesn't tell your character. It doesn't tell how you treat people. It doesn't tell whether you listen, whether you apologize when you're wrong, whether you make someone feel emotionally safe. Those things are learned, chosen, practiced, again and again. I've seen younger women quietly lose interest in men close to their own age because emotional immaturity made every conversation feel like a competition. I've also seen meaningful relationships grow across an age gap because both people treated each other with respect, honesty, and patience. Neither outcome proves a rule. It simply reminds us that people are more complex than stereotypes. Sometimes life surprises us, and that's probably a good thing, because if attraction followed a perfect formula, there would be very little room for genuine connection. The healthiest relationships often begin when two people stop trying to fit someone else's expectations and start paying attention to the person sitting across from them. That doesn't mean ignoring practical realities. Age differences can bring real conversations about the future, priorities, family, or timing. Those conversations deserve honesty, not avoidance. But honesty isn't the enemy of romance. In many cases, it's what allows romance to survive after the excitement settles. So if you ever find yourself interested in someone younger, don't ask yourself only one question. Can this work? There's another question that matters much more. Who do I become when I'm with her? Do you become someone who performs? Or someone who connects? Someone who seeks constant reassurance? Or someone who offers calm? Someone who hides behind experience? Or someone who stays curious enough to keep learning? Because the strongest relationships rarely belong to the people who never felt uncertain. They belong to the people who refuse to let uncertainty become the loudest voice in the room. And maybe that's the quiet truth most men spend years searching for. The age gap may be what catches your attention, but the relationship is almost never built on years. It's built on how two people make each other feel, one ordinary day at a time. If this conversation gave words to thoughts you've carried quietly, subscribe and join us for more reflections on relationships, emotional intelligence, and the subtle psychology behind meaningful connection. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep choosing authenticity over performance.